But Muslim tolerance was not just about taxes and non-believers. An attractive characteristic of the Arabs was that they were culturally tolerant, curious, ready to adapt traditions they found in the civilizations they conquered. They took over the Persian and Byzantine forms of government, complete with bureaucracy and absolutism, but they also preserved the cultural heritage of Greece and Persia, philosophy and geography, astronomy, mathematics, chemistry, and in many cases they improved on them. Arabic became what Greek had been to the Hellenistic world, the common language of an Islamic world that ran from the East Indies to Spain. It created a sort of international network of letters and science, where writers in Spain could affect thinkers in Persia, and where philosophers from India could read what was written in North Africa. The Arabs transmitted the works of Aristotle, who is depicted here in a 13th century manuscript, and the works of Plato, when both were forgotten in the West. The Arabs picked up Greek medical science as perfected in Persia and passed it on. This, for instance, is a doctor preparing a batch of cough syrup. And Arab medicine was sufficiently in advance of European medicine that when the first European medical school was founded at Salerno in Italy in the 10th century, it was staffed by Muslims. Their architecture influenced Western designs, especially the minarets of their mosques, which are reflected in our bell towers. They borrowed from the Hindus what we now call Arabic numerals. They introduced a Chinese invention, paper, and we can see by the words we've taken from them, algebra, alcohol, zenith, zero, how much they affected our sciences as well. Militarily, Islam was checked in the 8th century. In 718, the Arabs were stopped in the east after a year-long siege of Constantinople, and in 733 they were driven out of Gaul by the Franks. But the influence of their civilization was going to affect backward Europe for centuries to come. Another instance of religious conflict with long-range effects was a long and bitter struggle dividing Christians between those who worshipped icons, that is, images like these of Abraham or David, and those who wanted to ban icons and were known as iconoclasts, literally breakers of images. In this Byzantine manuscript, a group of bishops expresses strong disapproval of an image of Christ. Now, icons depicting Christ, the Virgin Mary, and a variety of saints had become tremendously popular objects of worship, related to healing, protection, and all kinds of miracles. Here again, a profound cultural difference divided East and West. It was the eastern provinces, closer to Jewish and Muslim traditions, which bred the greatest opposition to the worship of icons. The West, meanwhile, regarded Eastern iconoclasm as sacrilege and heresy. This issue divided the empire for over 100 years, between 726, when one Byzantine emperor, Leo III, ordered all icons destroyed, and 843, when the icons were finally reinstated for good. It also quite literally helped to divide Christendom between Rome and Constantinople, because the Patriarch of Constantinople stood for iconoclasm, while the Pope of Rome stood against it. This meant that after the 8th century, the Roman popes no longer looked for support from Constantinople against the barbarians. Instead, they turned to barbarians for support in the religious struggles against Constantinople. Actually, the formal break in Christendom was going to come in 1054, when Pope Leo IX in Rome and Patriarch Michael Cerularius in Constantinople excommunicated each other. That was when the political division that had been growing between East and West for centuries was confirmed by a religious division which persists today. Officially, the break came because when Romans and Byzantines stopped disagreeing about icons, they disagreed about whether priests should marry or wear beards, and whether the bread in the sacrament should be leavened or not, and whether the creed, the official statement of the most essential articles of faith, whether the creed should have the Holy Spirit proceed from the Father and the Son, or from the Father through the Son. Behind the doctrinal differences, however, lay the immemorial contempt of the Latin for the Greek, and the disdain of the legitimate empire in Constantinople for the upstart empire in the West, which was now run by barbarians. And behind that, there must have been, too, the simple fact that the empire was no longer united in any way, that its parts had become quite different, with one speaking in Latin and the other in Greek. So the Mediterranean world, which had once been knit together by a bilingual culture, was now split into two halves which could no longer understand each other.